Mr. Speaker, what a few days this has been. What a week we have had to endure as politicians who serve in this House. Our politics have been taken to a very, very dark place indeed. The sense that rules have been torn up, the feeling that we've returned to the worst days of Tory sleaze, sleaze that we thought had been buried and gone, never to return. There's a sense of outrage amongst the public that I've never seen in the 20 years that I've been in this place. And this is palpable and tangible into bulging email boxes with angry constituents demanding to know what on earth is going on and demanding that we put this right and sort this mess out. One has to ask, what on earth were they thinking of? What were they trying to achieve? What did they want to do? What did they think was going to happen with introducing that motion the way that they did? And I almost feel sorry for the Right Honourable Gentleman, the Minister for the Cabinet Office. If there was a short straw for turning up to try and defend this government's action, he most certainly picked it today. And it should be his Right Honourable friend leading this debate. It was him that brought that grubby motion to the House last Wednesday. It was him that defended it to the hilt. It was him that took up nearly half the time that was allowed to us in order to have this debated. He should be standing at that dispatch box today, defending the government's action and telling him what he's going to do. Now, he always likes to remind me of battles of past. Can I say to him today that he's like the brave Sir Robin from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, bravely running away from doing his duty at the dispatch box. And we know that this was a plot that was hatched between the Right Honourable Gentleman and his Right Honourable friend, the Government Chief Whip, designed and approved and orchestrated through Number 10 with the weight of the whipping operation that we saw last Wednesday. This is something that goes all the way to the very top. What the two of them did was to open the Tory Pandora box marked sleaze, and what a grubby, rotten receptacle it's turned out to be. A government prepared to reinvent the rules if they don't like them. A government so arrogant and entitled that it believes it can get away with whatever it wants. I give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. He's mentioned obviously the Pandora's box of sleaze, and he'll be familiar with the corruption allegations that appeared in the Sunday Times yesterday following an investigation by Open Democracy. Does he not believe, as I do, that that isn't just a matter for this House and for Parliament, but for the police too?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend because I do want to get round to that particular case, and I did note that yesterday. I was here for Cash for Honours Mark 1. This is Cash for Honours Mark 2.0, and I want to specifically refer to that, and I will do that in my remarks. I will, then I'll make progress.
I thank the honourable member. As he's on this topic, does he not agree with me that another aspect that has created great anger and concern in our communities is the funding of political parties? And if we look particularly at the Russians and the way they are now currently funding the Conservative Party, with Lyubov Chanukin giving £2.1 million to the Conservative Party, Alexander Temerko giving £1.3 million to the Conservative Party, and he's a part owner of a company that is trying to build an underwater cable, together with Viktor Fedotov, who also owns that company and who has given money to the Chancellor, to the Honourable Member for Reading West, to the Minister for Corporate Social Responsibility, to the Secretary of State for International Trade and the Chief Secretary of the Treasury. Is this right? Good, well said.
And it was a long intervention, but a necessary one. I think she's absolutely right and spot on. The way that donations will be going into the Tory party is something that needs to be properly investigated, and I'm going to suggest a way that that should be done in the course of my deliberations this afternoon. But, Mr Speaker, we're in day 6 of this. We're at 6 days. This has dominated political discourse in our media, in the public and in our communities and in our constituencies. Nobody usually survives that. No government minister who's presided and overseen something that goes on day after day after day. And the thing is, it's shown no sign of abating. It's shown no sign of going away. Now, I don't know if the public will accept the apology made by the Right Honourable Gentleman. I suspect not. I don't think that was what the public wanted to hear. Yes, we want to hear this government standing there saying, sorry, we got this totally wrong. But I think the public want to hear this government being just that little bit more contrite, just that little bit more accommodating with the feelings and the sentiment that's out there in our constituency. Our constituents are angry. Our constituents are fed up. And I think that the right honourable gentleman has to do a little bit better than that. I will give way to
I thank him for giving way. We have already established that the corrupt and bad behaviour of some MPs damage all of us. So what is needed now, doesn't he agree, is a commitment of every single member in this House to strengthen rather than weakening the standards process and the rules around it.
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right and spot on. That's exactly what is required. I mean, when I hear them talking about reforming some of the rules and regulations and some of the things that we have in place, I'm not actually hearing an attempt to strengthen, make them better, make them more accountable. What I'm hearing from them is, let's weaken them. Let's make sure that people can get off with things. If we don't like them, let's rewrite them and do them all again. That is what we're hearing from them. And can I say, I feel really sorry for honourable colleagues, honourable ladies and gentlemen at the back. The way that they've been treated by the front bench is almost approaching cruelty. Almost approaching cruelty. They've been marched all the way to the top of the hill by the Right Honourable Grand Old Duke of York. Then they've been marched all the way down again. But not just marched all the way down, they've been met with a barrage and volley of barbed constituent emails in the consternation of the people they represent. I feel sorry for these honourable ladies and gentlemen here today having to take that, and I hope they know who's to blame for what they've had to secure. Yes, I'll give way to the lady.
I thank him for allowing this. Of course, this isn't the first time we've seen this Prime Minister do things that have shocked her constituents. And the last time I had a mailbag similar to this weekend's was the illegal prorogation of Parliament just over a couple of years ago, which my honourable friend took to Supreme Court and exposed. There was the level of outrage for that particular incident is similar to this, and they've learned nothing from it.
Absolutely. I think there's a few little spikes we get in terms of interest from our constituents about business of this place. And she's right to mention that one. That was particularly a busy week for members of Parliament. The other one, of course, was Barnard Castle. I don't think we've quite reached the heights of Barnard Castle yet in terms of the response from the public, but we're getting very, very close to that. And I think that as this goes on and we find this unresolved, we'll be starting to get into that territory. But I listened very carefully to the Right Honourable Gentleman, and I could sense that he's not listening very carefully to me. But I listened very carefully to him. And I still don't know what the government's position on this is. And maybe he could help us. I don't know if they're summing up today, but we need to hear from the government what they are going to do now. What I think I heard was that they're sorry for this mess. Fair enough, they're sorry for this mess. That's great. We'll accept your apology. But now tell us what you're going to do. Because the motion setting up the Kangaroo Court Committee of Corruption is still in place. That is the policy of this House. We need to hear them say clearly that they are taking this off and find some means and method to ensure that no longer is part of the business of this House. We need to hear them say that they are prepared to accept independent investigation and they will support our Right Honourable friend, the Chair of the Standards Committee, and his committee in doing the work. We need to hear them say that. We also need to hear them say that they are going back to that moment just before the division bell rang last Wednesday, and we go back to the situation position that we were in before any of this nonsense started.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. I have a concern about his proposition, because last week, whether one agreed with the Right Honourable Member for South North Hampshire's amendment, the government utilised it as a motion of confidence in themselves. Therefore, I have no confidence, I'm sure he has no confidence, that any of that is going to change.
Absolutely, and this is why we need clarity, and I think we have to hear this by today. I think the suggestion, I think it was from the Chair of the Committee, who said that we need this motion to come tomorrow so we deal effectively with the Honourable Member for North Shropshire. We have to have that in front of this House, and we have to be able to make sure that our judgment is passed on what we believe is the consequences of his action. And one other thing, the disgraceful attacks on the Standards Commissioner. Now, They were coordinated. There's absolutely no way that we could get around this. They came from the top. They were directed. I mean, you do not attack the credibility with disrespectful what things said about the Standards Commission if you've not got permission to do that and say that. And I think what they had in mind was a softening up exercise, because they know that the Prime Minister is going to be investigated again. They know that there's a number of issues that still have to be resolved about his personal behaviour and conduct. And I think the undermining and neutering of the Standards Commission was a deliberate process, and it has to stop. It has to end. The Prime Minister is almost like a revolving door of investigation, whether it's breaking the ministerial code, acting unlawfully, soliciting donations for luxury holidays and home refurbishments. So the one thing that we could commit today is to this House to say that we have full faith and trust in our Standards Commissioner, and we will allow her to do her job. The undermining and the disgraceful attacks now must end. But the true shocker of the past couple of days is Cash for Honours 2.0. I really didn't think falling Tony Blair, being questioned under caution by the Metropolitan Police 15 years ago, we would be back to this place so quickly. I mean, that was only in a couple of parliaments ago that Tony Blair had to face questions about donations to the House of Lords. The only difference that I've seen in the course of the past couple of decades is the price to get into the House of Lords has gone up from £1 million from New Labour to £3 million from the Conservatives. There's Tory inflation for you, Mr Speaker. It now seems that nearly all the past treasurers of the Conservative Party of later years are in that place. They've all in that place, wearing their ermine, taken a part in the legislative decisions of this country. And the only characteristic that they seem to have, the only defining feature that seems to get them a place in that House is the fact that they're able to give several £1 million to this government. The DEFRA Secretary, the Environment Secretary, I'll just wait a minute with the honourable gentleman. The Environment Secretary yesterday said they were in the Lords for their philanthropy. I think the public will probably assess that the accounts of the Conservative Party is just about the worst and least deserving good cause that there is in this land. I'll give it to my friend.
Grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, who's making a very powerful point about this issue. Does he think it's a coincidence that the 22 largest donors to the Conservative parties now hold peerages and sit in the House of Lords?
Well, that's not just a coincidence.
I don't, I have to say, because I think that place is just so corrupted that it's a receptacle for donors of this place for either of the big parties. And I have to include the Liberals when it comes to that too, because some of their activities around the House of Lords is just as bad as the two main parties. So what I've done today, Mr Speaker, I've asked the Metropolitan Police to investigate these appointments under the provisions of Section 1, Subsection 2 of the Honours Prevention of Abuses Act 1925. That Act states, if any person gives or agrees or proposes to give or offers to any person any gift, money or valuable consideration as an inducement or reward for procuring or assisting or endeavouring to procure the grant of a dignity or title of honour to any person or otherwise in connection with such a grant shall be guilty of a misdemeanour. I have now asked the Metropolitan Police to investigate the activities of the Conservative Party and the awarding of places in the House of Lords. And I'll say ever so gently to my friends in the Labour Party, stop putting people in that place. Stop giving it the legitimacy and credibility. We don't need a Gordon-bound commission. We just need you guys as the opposition party to say you will abolish it. It is a circus. It is a corrupt circus. And it is the high point of deference in the class system. And to think that a Labour Party would defend that place and put people in it is beyond ridiculous. Grow up, get a sense of this and help us get rid of that appalling circus down the corridor. Mr Speaker, last week the Tories royally cocked up and have had to beat an embarrassing, hasty retreat. Their next move might now define the rest of their parliamentary term. Accept this. you'd have to do more than apologise. You have to show contrition. You have to show that you really mean this. This is the task and job for this Conservative government just now. They have got to take us back to that point before the bells went last Wednesday. We don't want to reform the standards process. We want it to continue to do its work. But nothing will happen until we get back to this point. Stop rewarding donors with places of the House of Lords. This is now all up to them. Show the contrition the public want, show that you're really sorry, and get us back to where we were.